For today's video, I'm going to be showcasing a mid-range Demacia list, and on the ladder, there's actually a number of these lists that kind of have been popping up as of late. The idea is pretty simple. You're just playing big, beefy units, and you're trying to abuse Relentless Pursuit. Now, a lot of times Demacia gets thrown in as a splash, specifically with like Shadow Isles decks or elusive decks because you want to run Relentless Pursuit. This list just says, hey, I'm just going to put big units on the board, and the idea is if you play smaller units that have like elusive, I'll just race you with my size. If you're playing, fearsome units or this or that, you're just trying to outvalue your opponent and then catch them with a superior board. We're going to go through the list. I know that, again, there's been a couple of different versions floating around. This one is the one that features Zed. I believe Navi has a list incredibly similar to mine. We might be off by like 1 or 2 cards. And I'm also going to talk about the elephant in the room, which is the lack of Senna, because I know that's going to be the #1 question when people see the list, because we're running Lucian but no Senna. And after I've played the list a little bit, I think I can definitively say I don't think she belongs. So right out of the gate, 1-drops. We've got Cytherea and Fleet Feather. This is just a fantastic 1-drop. It's one of the better 1-drops in the game, in my opinion. You want to be running this. Cytherea is largely here just to give you additional presence early on. Both of these cards are, fine in a list like this. This one is not as important in this list as it is in some of the other lists, because a lot of times you use this challenger unit to trade but then die and then turn on effects, things like Dawn Speaker or Radiant, but we're not running those cards. This is just early presence dictating how combat goes, etc. Radiant Strike is just a nice cheap combat trick, but it's burst speed and it gets the job done. All right, in the 2 slots, we have Bright Steel. It's a 3/2 body with a great effect, so it goes in. Lucian, 3/2 with quick attack, and if you get it to level up, then it's a bonus. But the reality is that a lot of times I play Lucian and then people panic and they overcommit to killing him, or sometimes he's just fine as a 3/2 quick attack. You can get him to level up, and I think that's one of the reasons that I like the Zed version of this, is because every time the ephemeral units die, they count toward his level up ability. But you don't have to go like overboard trying to level Lucian. It's a nice to have. 2 Purify. This card is just kind of general purpose good. It helps you get rid of elusive on certain key units. It helps you get rid of those big buffs. So specifically, this card is an all-star in the elusive matchup. If they play that, Jeweled Protector targeting their Lifeblade, and then Lifeblade comes down and you kind of just giggle while you say no to that. It's just general purpose, great card overall. You can use this on your own units to get rid of Frostbite as well. So in certain matchups, that's very relevant. Single combat is kind of like your targeted removal. This can also be very cheeky, because if you're in a very tight game and somebody has a lifesteal unit and you get into combat and they block with said lifesteal unit, or you need to block one of their lifesteal units, you can also then use single combat to have your unit that was in combat with the lifesteal unit go into single combat with the other unit, trade, and then when yours dies, the lifesteal unit is still considered blocked, but no damage is done, so they don't gain health. So there's a lot of really neat ways that you can use this card as well. So we're running 2 of them. War Chefs is, a 2/3 body for 2 is fine. The give my supported ally +1/+1 is very relevant. It makes this become like a 3/3 on turn 2, which is very relevant. Similarly, lets this trade up. Playing Bright Steel onto War Chefs like on later turns, and then having the War Chefs buff something while also being barriered, so you can't get rid of this, and whatever it's buffing, ideally something like a Lucian, that much better. It's just, this is one of those cards that kind of looks mediocre on paper, and then when you see it in action, you're like, oh man, I hate that thing. 3 Relentless Pursuit. This is kind of the crux of the deck. You're trying to establish kind of a superior board position through these value trades early on, and then when you get to a point where you've got 3 or 4 units to 1 on your opponents, you catch them with a quick Relentless Pursuit that they just can't respond to, and you hit them with a big burst of damage. 3 Redeemers, because we don't have a lot of card draw in this deck. This is just your nice like cycle, play a body. One Sergeant. I like the one Sergeant because the 4 Demacia lasts like the entire round. So if you get to a point where you're trying to close out a game and you have, even if it's just 3 units on the board, you can play that 4 Demacia to buff them all, swing, and then you hit them with that Relentless Pursuit and you swing again. Again, that's just a big kind of burst, big push in tempo in your favor. Zed is mostly here to be annoying and help power Lucian and give you another quick attack unit. Bannerman is fantastic. It's very often a 4/4 for 4 that gives your other units the +1/+1 because that is the only Ionia card that we're running. Lancer here, this is kind of like your top end removal. Demacia doesn't have a lot of straight removal options, so you have to rely on Challenger. This one lets you trade with large units, and then because it's going to die and give you the last breath, it kind of replaces itself. The big reason that Swiftwing Lancer has grown on me is because if you resolve this on 5 and then on 6 you get to play a Bannerman and this goes up to a 6/5, that means you can Challenger into Hecarim, kill a Hecarim, and your Lancer survives. That is huge. So this card's been growing on me quite a bit in decks that also run Bannerman. 1 back-to-back. 2 Cytherea. Cytherea is kind of your closer, your finisher. She is also great because she trades with Hecarim and survives, and she buffs your entire board and gives them not full-on elusiveness, but some form of evasion, right? Fearsome is very relevant. So overall, this is the list. Now, the reason that I'm not running Senna specifically is because when you look at our 3 slot, and it's already, pretty well saturated, and there's a lot of competition there, you're not going to take out Relentless Pursuit. And then, as I said before, we just don't have a lot of card draw, and Redeemer is very necessary, I think, to kind of keep pace. So we're not going to take out Zed. I mean, you could maybe if you wanted to go Mono Demacia, but Zed's just going to overall be better. And then we've got the 1 Sergeant. So there's not a lot of room there. So we'd have to either pull from other locations. Maybe you pull the single combats. Maybe you drop out like 1 Radiant Strike. There's all these things you could do to try to fit her in. But at the end of the day, her biggest drawback is the 2 health. Mystic Shot has grown in popularity. There's a lot of ways to deal 2 damage to a unit in the meta right now. And if you play Senna and she dies and you do not have Lucian on the board, it's really rough. Like, you don't want to pay 3 for something that's just going to die to the 2 mana spell. And even if Lucian's on the board, then you're looking for trouble. Now, conversely, right, if you play Senna and instead their response is to kill the Lucian and then your Senna levels up, you might be pretty excited, but the problem is then if they kill Senna, Senna's not a champion. So when you level up Senna, when you get her ability, it doesn't level up the rest of the ones in your deck. So you need Lucian to keep dying, to keep giving her benefit. And that's not really just something that happens very often. And smart players will know to just kill Lucian to let Senna get the buff, as opposed to killing Senna to give Lucian a permanent level up for the rest of the game. So in practice, there's been several games where I've had like the dream. It's been like 1-drop Lucian, Senna, and I have lost. And not just like lost because my opponent had the nuts. I mean, lost pretty decisively, because at the end of the day, this is a deck that is more about trying to win with bulk, if that makes sense. And running too many like brittle but has quick attack units means you are not taking advantage of the bulk. Now, you might be saying to yourself, well, like, why am I running Zed then if he has the exact same problem? He's still a 3-drop. He still has that 2 health. But the answer is that if you level Zed up, Zed's permanently leveled up, and that's not the case with Senna. Also, the thing with Zed is you can get a lot more value out of buffing a Zed than you can out of buffing a Senna. So if your 2 is, turn 2 is you play War Chefs, and then turn 3 is you play Zed, you get a lot more value out of having this support Zed than you do the Senna. Senna can just get blocked by like a spider, and then that's it, right? Zed requires them to come up with more answers. He's just more imposing. So that plus the fact that his Ephemeral Shadow will also help you trigger Lucian in a more consistent way, in my opinion, I think just makes Zed the better 3-drop. So now that I've kind of talked to death, let's go play one game on this so that you can see the deck in action. As always, I'm going to put the deck code in the video description as well. And yeah, let's jump into that game. All right, so we're jumping into a game, and it looks like we're going to be up against the Teemo version of Prankster aggro. So we're going to try to find some early game here and not find it. There we go. This deck, specifically the Teemo version, has become pretty popular because I know Swim has been playing it a lot.
Of course I'm ready.
New recruit reporting in.
Light the fuse.
And the non-Teemo version is something I've featured on my channel before. I think right now we're okay with our opener here. Oh, Skitterer is a beautiful answer. I mean, literally stops us in our tracks. We went from having an insane turn to just being shut down, essentially. We really want them to not take the open attack, for the record. We want them to be greedy enough so that we can get a Bannerman buff here. Now, we don't want them to have a Butcher.
Don't mind me. We weren't expecting all this.
So they're gonna just sneak in some Cursed Keeper damage. And that's fine. And we're gonna go straight into an open attack with you pulling here.
I have many feet. It wasn't me.
Now I expect Mark of the Isles, yeah. Interesting. So we have to now decide, do we want to save our Zed or kill this? I think the answer is actually to save this and kill the Zed, because we can still get a really good... no, let's save the Zed. I was going to say we could get a really good Relentless Pursuit. There's also an argument to be made here about, instead of playing this at all, we just let this die, and then we could have just replayed this. So I think that's actually the better path. Playing this, the other unit's going to die no matter what, so playing this because this just turns into Zed doesn't make an awful lot of sense there.
First one's free.
Instead, we would rather just... I think cycle that. Because their board was full, they didn't get to make their 4-4. So I made one sequencing mistake there. This should have came down before this, but it's made up for the fact that they had that sequencing issue.
Whoa! Hey!
Alright, we're gonna go with something like this and get the surrender. So yeah, I made the one mistake, but thankfully we still came out ahead, came out on top. And I mean, that's a fast game, but that's against a very meta deck. Like I said, it's very popular on the ladder right now. Swim has been, you know, very effective with that list, and it's become a bit popular, so you should expect to see the Teemo version of Prankster quite a bit. Anyway, if you made it this far, thanks for watching. I appreciate you. Maybe consider subscribing, and hopefully I'll catch you watching future videos.